The boutique shimmered like a jewel box dropped into the middle of the city, its glass walls catching the afternoon sun and scattering it across the sidewalk in sharp, blinding flashes. Alina slowed her steps as she approached, her reflection rippling across the flawless surface, plain dress, practical shoes, hair pulled back neatly but without effort. She paused, adjusting the strap of her worn canvas bag on her shoulder, as if that small movement might give her courage. People passed behind her, some glancing briefly before continuing on, already assuming she was just another passerby, not a customer. She told herself she didn't need to be nervous. She wasn't doing anything wrong. She was here to buy a gift. That was all. When the doors slid open, cool air washed over her, carrying a faint scent of citrus and something more elusive, Polish, leather, money. Her footsteps sounded too loud on the marble floor, and instinctively she softened them, as though quietness could make her less noticeable. Inside, everything gleamed. Gold-trimmed shelves held handbags arranged like museum pieces. Mannequins stood in silent judgment, draped in silk and wool so fine it almost seemed unreal. Sales associates moved through the space with practiced grace, their black suits crisp, their expressions neutral but watchful. One of them flicked her eyes toward Alina, just for a second too long, then looked away. Another whispered something under her breath to a colleague. Alina pretended not to notice. She had learned long ago how to exist inside places that didn't expect her. She wandered toward a display of scarves near the back, drawn by the colors, deep emerald, soft ivory, a blue that reminded her of early morning skies. She reached out and touched the edge of one, barely grazing the fabric with her fingertips. It was impossibly soft. The price tag made her inhale sharply, but she didn't pull her hand away. She had planned for this. She had saved, little by little, setting aside money she could have spent on herself but didn't. Today mattered. Her husband never cared about expensive things. He wore the same watch he'd owned for years, the leather strap cracked and softened with age. But tonight he would be standing on a stage, cameras flashing, people applauding. She wanted him to have something that felt special, something that told him she saw him, not as the powerful man the world admired, but as the man who drank tea with her in the mornings and listened when she talked about her day. A sudden laugh broke the calm, sharp and dismissive. "Careful," a man's voice said, loud enough to carry across the room. "That isn't something you can afford to damage." Alina flinched and turned. The man stood a few feet away, tall and immaculately dressed, his suit cut perfectly, his shoes gleaming. She recognized him instantly. His face was everywhere, magazines, interviews, giant posters advertising the very brand she stood inside now. The owner. His gaze swept over her in one slow, unapologetic scan, lingering on her shoes, her bag, the simplicity of her dress. His mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "I'm sorry," Alina said, her voice soft but steady. "I was just looking." He let out a short laugh, shaking his head. "This isn't a gallery, and it certainly isn't a place for browsing." A sales associate nearby froze, hands clasped together, eyes darting between them. Another customer pretended to study a rack of coats, though her head was tilted just enough to hear every word. Alina's fingers tightened around the scarf, then she let it fall back into place. "I'm here to buy a gift," she said. "I didn't mean to waste time," the man finished for her. "You should be more considerate. This brand represents a standard." She swallowed. "I understand." His eyebrow lifted, skeptical. "Do you?" Heat crept into her cheeks, but she reached into her bag and pulled out her wallet anyway, opening it just enough to show she hadn't come empty-handed. "I can pay," she said quietly. Something in his expression shifted, not to surprise, but to amusement. Before she could react, he turned toward a small table beside him where a glass of water sat, clear and untouched. He picked it up, weighing it in his hand for a brief moment, as if deciding something. Then he flicked his wrist. Cold water splashed across Alina's chest and down the front of her dress, soaking into the fabric. The shock stole her breath. Droplets slid from her sleeves, darkening the cloth, dripping onto the marble floor below. A gasp rippled through the boutique. "Oh," the man said lightly, setting the empty glass down. "How clumsy of me." Alina stood frozen, her mind scrambling to catch up with what had just happened. Her hands trembled, the wallet slipping slightly in her grip. She could feel the wet fabric clinging to her skin, the chill spreading. "Accidents happen," he continued, his tone almost bored. "But maybe this will remind you where you don't belong." Silence pressed in from all sides. No one moved, no one spoke. For a split second, Alina felt the sting behind her eyes, the familiar burn of humiliation threatening to spill over. She imagined herself turning away, rushing out, letting the tears come only once she was alone. That was what people like him expected. Instead, she drew in a slow breath. She straightened her back, lifting her chin. Her voice, when she spoke, was quiet, but it didn't shake. I know exactly where I belong. The man blinked, clearly not expecting that. Then he laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound. Of course you do. She didn't respond. She simply stood there, water still dripping from her dress, meeting his gaze without flinching. Something unreadable passed through her eyes. Hurt, yes, but also something else. Resolve. Behind her, the doors of the boutique slid open again. Alina didn't turn yet, but she felt it, the shift in the air, the subtle change in tension, like the moment before a storm breaks. Footsteps echoed across the marble floor, steady and unhurried. The man was still smiling. He wouldn't be for long. The footsteps were calm, unhurried, yet they seemed to carry their own gravity, each one landing with quiet authority against the marble floor. Conversations that had not even begun dissolved before forming. A few sales associates instinctively straightened their posture, hands folding in front of them as if they had been rehearsing this moment without knowing it. Even the lights seemed harsher now, reflecting off polished surfaces that suddenly felt exposed. Kareem entered the boutique without announcement. There was no entourage, no flourish, nothing to draw attention except the way the room itself responded to him. He wore a dark suit, impeccably fitted but understated, the kind chosen by someone who didn't need labels to confirm his status. His eyes moved once around the space, taking in details with the efficiency of a man used to reading rooms for a living. Then he saw her. For a brief moment, everything else vanished. The noise, the luxury, the people pretending not to stare, all of it blurred. His gaze fixed on Alina, standing near the scarf display, her shoulders squared, her dress darkened by water. He saw the set of her jaw, the way she held herself too still, as if movement might crack something fragile inside. His expression changed instantly. He crossed the room in long, deliberate strides. A few customers stepped aside without realizing why. One sales associate opened her mouth as if to speak, then thought better of it. Kareem stopped in front of Alina, his voice dropping into the familiar softness he used only with her. Alina, he said, gently. What happened? She turned, startled, and for the first time since the water had hit her, the tension in her face wavered. Kareem, she glanced down at her dress, then back up at him. It's nothing. I'm fine. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he removed his jacket and placed it carefully around her shoulders, the warmth of it a stark contrast to the chill soaking into her clothes. His hand brushed her arm, grounding, reassuring. His eyes lifted slowly to the man standing a few feet away. I asked, Kareem said, his voice calm but firm, what happened? The brand owner's confident posture faltered. He forced a smile that looked brittle up close. Mr. Kareem, I didn't realize you were visiting today. There's been a small misunderstanding. This woman, Kareem raised one hand, silencing him without a word. He slipped an arm around Alina, pulling her just slightly closer, a gesture that was both intimate and unmistakably protective. She's my wife, he said. The words fell into the boutique like a dropped crystal glass, sharp, unmistakable, impossible to ignore. A woman near the entrance gasped. One of the sales associates visibly paled. The brand owner's smile collapsed entirely. Your wife, he echoed, disbelief cracking his voice. Yes. Kareem's tone remained even, but his eyes had hardened. The woman you insulted, the woman you humiliated, the woman you threw water on. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable. No one dared to move. I didn't know, the brand owner stammered, running a hand over his tie. If I had known who she was. Kareem's jaw tightened. You would have shown basic decency. He asked. Or only the kind reserved for people you think matter. The man opened his mouth, then closed it again. Kareem turned slightly, angling his body so he was fully facing him now. You see, this is exactly the problem. You don't treat people with respect because it's right. You treat them based on what you think they're worth. He gestured around the boutique, his hand sweeping across the racks of clothing, the gleaming shelves, the carefully curated luxury. You sell elegance, but you practice cruelty. You speak about class, but you don't understand it. The brand owner swallowed hard. Mr. Kareem, please, let me apologize. We can offer compensation, anything you like. Kareem looked back at Alina. His expression softened again, the sharpness melting away as he studied her face. Why did you come here? He asked quietly. She hesitated, then nodded toward the scarves. I wanted to buy something for you. Today's important. I wanted it to be nice. For a moment, something like regret flickered in his eyes, not because of the scarf, but because she had been hurt while trying to do something kind for him. You don't ever need to prove anything, he said softly. Not to me. He kissed her forehead, brief and tender, entirely unconcerned with the dozens of eyes watching. Then he turned back to the brand owner, and the warmth vanished. There will be no compensation, Kareem said. And no apology will undo what you've already shown everyone in this room. He pulled his phone from his pocket and typed a single message. Effective immediately, all partnerships between my companies and this brand are terminated. The color drained from the man's face. You can't be serious, he whispered. Do you know what that will cost? Yes, Kareem replied. I do. He slipped the phone away. And that investment will be redirected to organizations that support women who are treated exactly the way you treated my wife today. The brand owner's shoulders sagged. There was nothing left for him to say. Kareem took Alina's hand, lacing his fingers through hers. Let's go, he said gently. As they walked toward the exit, the room parted around them. No one spoke. The doors slid open, and sunlight spilled in, bright and warm, washing away the sterile glow of the boutique. Outside, Alina finally exhaled, her breath shaky. I didn't want to cause trouble, she murmured. Kareem squeezed her hand. You didn't, he said. You stood your ground. That's not trouble, that's strength. She leaned slightly into him as they walked down the street, leaving behind the marble floors, the silent stares, and a brand that had just learned the true cost of arrogance.